like I was telling Elliot, everybody just comes to see the kids now. After a while, you feel like nobody wants to visit with you when you're a new parent. So today's week 4 of our 40-day journey, and our focus today is on letting go so we can find God, specifically in difficult situations. Now, if you remember, last week we talked about worry and fear being synonymous and the importance of us understanding how fear shows up in our lives. So this week, Bobby Lopez, who is a contributor to our weekly stories, sent me an awesome story of her own experience this week with being in that place of fear. So she was saying in her email, I won't get into the details, but she said she had this frustrating experience. And she felt that frustration. And she remembered that we said only two feelings, love and fear. So if there's only love and fear and you're not feeling love, then it has to be fear that you're experiencing. So as soon as she recognized that her frustrations were coming from a place of fear about the outcomes of what was happening, she immediately realized and she released it. But what was more obvious to her was how fear is not what we might think it is. We think of fear as being scared, but that's not really true. Fear could be all kinds of things. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I'm wondering if I'm going to get that call. I'm worried I won't get my paycheck this week. Whatever it is, it may not be that you're scared, but it's preoccupying your mind. So she said, I let it all go after hearing that talk. I just let it all go. And she said, within an hour, the entire situation was resolved and better than what she thought. So I thought it was great that she told me that because, as I mentioned to her, she had the courage to release it. And when you have the courage to let it go, then the answers will show up. But if you're blocking them, there's no place for them to go. Jesus modeled that kind of courage. Reverend Ellen Dullenport talks about how Jesus modeled that courage, acted from that divine spirit, and demonstrated faith in difficult situations. And if you remember, all of the disciples represent our human fears. Every story that you ever read in the Bible has a story about someone being fearful, running into a challenge, having a problem. But Jesus, when those people would talk to him about the challenges they had, he didn't get rattled. He just automatically put himself into faith mode. And because he believed faith was the remedy to fear. And he always felt that God had his back. And of course, back in those days, we were referring to God like God was the person in the chair in the sky, with the beard. But that energy that we're a part of will always have our back, will always act in our favor when we step into it instead of resisting it. We all have that ability. Now, I know, just from my individual conversations with people here, that we have all grappled with what's been going on in Israel. Israel, Hamas, the war that they're having, the people who are suffering. Same was what we went through when we were worried about the people in the Ukraine and what was going on between Russia and the Ukraine. And what about the hundreds of shootings that we've had in our own country? And the number of people who have suffered. And in all these experiences, people ask me the same question: where is God in this? So I want to specifically talk about finding God in these situations, because it comes from how you choose to see God's role and what your belief system says to you about who God or what God is. So starting today and in the upcoming week, I'm going to encourage each of you to begin the process of evaluating where your beliefs came from and what you actually believe. And this is how you're going to do it. It's a simple exercise I want you to really commit to. Answer this question or statement. Fill in the blank. God is blank. And keep writing until you run out of ideas. God is blank. And write it down so you can reflect upon it. You can repeat it till you run out of words. But what I want you to understand is what you believe about God is what determines what you think when a war breaks out. Or when a child is injured. Or when a shooting occurs. In order to find God in difficult times, we have to reflect on our belief system. Marcus Borg says, every belief we currently have was influenced from the lens of our culture and our upbringing, which he says is broken down into three phases. The first one being what he calls pre-critical naivety. And that means that as small children, any authority who spoke to us, we believed what they said. Whatever we were told, you don't eat dessert before dinner, right? Whatever we were told, where God is, what God looks like, whatever we were told, we believed. Then the next phase is called acritical naivety. And that's the place where we start to piece together for ourselves, could that be right? Is that true? Is that real? But then the third stage, which is post-critical naivety, is where we start to believe in things we have no proof of. There's no fact behind it. Now, if you think about how we were raised and how our brains work, then you understand that there's at some point in our life, we could say, this is where that belief system began. This is where it really began to become my foundation. The first chapter in Charles Fillmore's book, Talks on Truth, is entitled Reform Your God Thought. And the book was first published in 1912. And the first sentences are completely eye-opening. Here's what it says. 1912, I'm reminding you, 100 years ago. This is distinctly the age of reforms. Never before have there been such widespread and persistent efforts by both men and women to right the wrongs of religion, society, and politics. 100 years ago, that was said. So that should tell us that our existence in this world will continue with righting wrongs, people against people, for the whole time we're around. Unless all humans subscribe to their divine nature. That's the reality. The same issues have repeated themselves from when we were small until now, and from when these young kids like Owen, until he grows up, the same issues will repeat themselves. But finding God in difficult times requires us understanding this from Charles's perspective, I believe. First, God is not a person who has set creation in motion, he says, and gone away and left it to run down like a clock. Second thing is God is spirit, infinite mind, the immanent force and intelligence that exists in everything, everywhere. It's like a divine light. And third, God is the silent voice that speaks into visibility all the life there is. It is spirit and energy, and we're all part of it. But the kingdom of heaven is within us. It is not outside of us. You want to be happy? Look inside. You want to be healthy? Look inside. You want to meet great people? Stop finding fault in all the people you do meet. You want to be loved? Stop acting unlovable. You're sick and tired of people being angry around you? Put more love into it. That divine light could light up the world if people would just get out of their own way. And we can all do that for ourselves, but we have to choose to be in that divine space. One of my favorite analogies about this, and I've shared it in the last several years, I'm sure, is Sir John Templeton's view of this. He says God is energy, but he says connecting with the divine energy can be compared to tuning a radio dial to a powerful broadcasting station. The transmitting station is constantly emitting a clear, concise signal. Some radios will pick up the signal, and some will not have a clear signal. He asks us to think about what we can do to improve our ability to receive that signal. It's a great thought. So what station are you tuned into is what I would ask myself. It's what I asked myself yesterday. What station are we tuned into? In an article entitled A God We Can Believe in, Minister Galen Gungerich helps us see the differing perspectives of God. First explains that Western religions believe God is supernatural, able to command and control the forces of nature at will in order to carry out the divine plan for creation. God can stop the sun, inhabit a human body, and walk on water. He said, with a supernatural God who makes all the rules and hands them down to humanity, religion then becomes nothing but merely obedience and rules. And he says, religion is merely obedience dressed up. But if God is not supernatural, he says, then religion has a serious role to play because it becomes the process of taking everything we know about this universe into account and creating a life of meaning and purpose within it. But it's up to us. There is no one coming to fix your life. I am here to tell you, I've been around long enough to know, no one is fixing our life. We have to do it. And we have to light the fire in ourselves to do things that are different than what we've been doing. And stop saying no to the things that could change our lives. You want a better opportunity? Open the door for opportunity to come in. Don't screen opportunity through your old lens. It can't happen that way. Charles Fillmore's writings become more valuable to us if we take and piece this all together. Charles says God is our higher self, and the higher we raise our consciousness, the more we can express our divine spirit. And from that highest part of ourselves, we act as witness then to all human activity. So think of it as that Christ consciousness, that highest place within us. But that's how you know God is not in these things. People are. And people choose to act from the dark in that fear and anger place, or choose to act from light and that divine space. And what are we seeing when we see people warring against each other? Heartlessly. It's definitely not love. And it's definitely not of God. But God is, just like the rest of us, is that energy. So that energy we belong to observes from our highest place that these people must work out their hate. That these people must work out the consciousness they have all fallen into. And we must pray to lift them out of that place. The level of consciousness we operate from determines the approach we take in life. And as a reminder, I know I've shared these over the years, but I'm just going to remind us. There's victim consciousness, which means life happens to me. I'm a victim. There's victor consciousness. Life happens by me. There's vessel consciousness. Life happens in me and as me. And there's truth consciousness. Life is me. The highest power, the highest energy in the universe is ours to embrace. Each of us is of free will to choose how we're going to walk through this lifetime, how we're going to think, how we're going to act. Human behavior, not God, is what sets positive or negative things into motion. There's no blame on God. This is people. And as I shared last week, we're either going to continue to act out of that love or we're going to act out of the fear. So if we put this thought together, do we believe in a supernatural God or divine energy? Are we living from a consciousness of victim or victor? And do we act out of love or fear? And last, I'm going to end with this thought. How will you complete this statement? God is. And how will doing so allow you to let go and find God? Let's review today's lessons. So letting go to find God requires us to know that we are of divine nature, that God is our higher self. Number 2, evaluate and affirm our belief system. God is blank. Number 3, recognize we have free will. Actions are human decisions. And number 4, all power is born in the silence. Seek the kingdom of heaven within. Our affirmation I wrote for today is, I am letting go and letting God. Let's say that together. I am letting go and letting God. And the quote from Mandy Hale is so perfect. When you let go, something magical happens because you give God room to work. Let's take that in. And so we pause for a moment to reflect upon the importance of choosing love over fear, letting go of whatever we're holding on to make way for solutions and answers to come forth. Remembering that our beliefs can be changed at any time. We're not robots. We can reprogram our thinking and bring nothing but happiness, joy, and prosperity to our lives if we would stop telling the same stories to ourselves. I am a divine child of God is the truth for all of us. I am part of the divine global team, and I am letting go and letting God. And so it is. Amen.